Welcome to this Fast 5 video on developing logic models for use within your program development. First question is, why do a logic model? It allows us to communicate with those people who may be stakeholders or on our project team, defines a roadmap for our project that is concise and easy to communicate, and it keeps us focused on the outcomes of our project, those that are short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Developing a logic model is a collaborative process. You want to include the appropriate stakeholders and project team members as you develop this. You want to start developing it as early as possible, as it really does help clarify what your goals of your project are. And as you're developing your logic model, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. These can be very detailed as you go on to develop them. And there's a sense that you're never quite done. Don't let your logic model go that far. Logic model conveys a story of change. What problems are we tackling? What are we going to do as our part of our project? And what changes will occur as a result of the work that we're doing? The components of a logic model include inputs. Those would include our inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes. And we're going to think of them within our projects in continuing professional development as short-term, medium-term, and long-term outcomes. You also might consider including your aim or need. While technically not part of a logic model, it provides your stakeholders and those you're communicating with an idea of what it is you're trying to do at a high level and what the need for that is within your organization. So let's take a look at a logic model. It includes, first of all, the inputs. What inputs are available to contribute to this project? Consider your human resources, data, funding, stakeholder support, community members, faculty, and other components that you would consider inputs into your project. Then, what activities will be developed? In a continuing professional development world, we often think of an activity as an individual learning event. I encourage you to think more broadly about the activities that you will develop. It might be a curriculum, it might be a survey tool, it might be training that is used as part of your project. So what is it that you will actually create as part of the project that you're working on? Then what is the output of your project? And it's really, what will the output of your activities be? Will there be data generated? This isn't where you want to go crazy with your quantitative information, but think about the tangibles that you will develop as the work. It might be a toolkit. It might be a curriculum training guide. It might be faculty that you have trained or an assessment tool. So you want to list out what your outputs may be. Then in terms of thinking about outcomes, we want to think about them as short-term outcomes, those that you might consider immediately post-activity to perhaps 6 months after your activities. And those might include a change in knowledge. It might include a number of satisfaction or participation in the materials that you're using. Then think about what your medium-term outcomes might be. And these might be 6 months to 2 years after. Do you anticipate a change in attitude from the work that you're going to be doing? Is it that you're going to increase the number of volunteers that might be working on an activity on your overall project? Think of those in a 6 months to 2 year framework. Then finally, think about your long-term outcome. And this would be 2 years and on, 2 to 5 years. And for much of the work that we do, we may not actually see the benefit of that those long-term outcomes, but it helps to think about what it is you're trying to do. Is it trying to reduce disease burden? Is it trying to reduce the cost of care? Is it trying to increase in community engagement or increase the number of grants that we are trying to do that are really community-based? So thinking about them in this short-term, medium-term, long-term approach will help you clarify what you need to measure and how you want to do this. You'll note at the top, we included the situation. What is the need for this project and what is the aim? You see in this graphical representation, having that situation or need is a valuable component of the work that you're doing. So again, as a reminder, your inputs are your investment, including your stakeholders. Your activities are what you will do. Your output is what your project develops. And then we think of outcomes in terms of a short-term, medium-term, and long-term approach in the 3 to 6 month, 6 month to 2 year, and beyond 2 year range. So some tips for developing your logic model. Include your aim and need. Be inclusive, but not exhaustive. If you are undertaking a large redesign of a program that you're working on, your logic model might be quite complex. Then it, however, is challenging to use that as a communication tool for what you do. Use a participative process to develop your logic model. Include those people who really do have a stake in the work that you were doing, and those staffers that may be heavily influenced by it. It doesn't mean you need to include everybody, but you want to make sure that this is done with the right kind of people in the room. Keep it simple. This isn't meant to be a complex 30-page document, but rather a simple graphical representation. Make sure that it really tells the story. Sit back and make sure that it tells what you're really trying to do. You might want to consider using arrows to link the various components together. How is it that an initial activity, what the outputs of that might be, and then how is it that it might have outcomes associated with it? And while I showed you one approach to the graphical display of a logic model, there's several different approaches you can use. Ensure your logic model is a way of thinking, not just a pretty picture. You should have a narrative or a story that goes with it. And then use your logic model to validate your project design. If you are looking for outcomes that aren't represented within either your inputs or your activities, then perhaps you might need to rethink either what your outcome may be or those components that would go into it. Just by way of a summary, be unique, reflect your project. You will find many different examples of a logic model, and you want to make sure it shows what you need it to do. Be creative as you think and reflect upon the different components that go into it, yet keep it logical. Somebody should be able to follow this. What evidence validates your model? And then how will you measure the success of your project? Thanks for participating in this Fast 5 on logic models. We look forward to seeing your logic models as you move forward with your work.